What happens when a guest walks onto one of television's most watched talk shows and decides to burn every bridge in sight? When someone so confident in their own importance forgets that respect goes both ways? In just 39 seconds, a single comment would turn a friendly interview into an all-out battle, and by the time the camera stopped rolling, one person would be walking off that stage for the last time. This is the story of how Meghan Markle got herself kicked off The View. The day started like any other episode of The View. The studio audience buzzed with excitement. Cameras were positioned. Lights were adjusted. Everything was ready. And sitting at that iconic table was Whoopi Goldberg, a woman who had earned her place through decades of hard work, talent, and authenticity. She had welcomed thousands of guests over the years. She had handled controversial topics with grace. She knew how to navigate difficult conversations, but nothing could have prepared her for what was about to unfold. When Meghan Markle walked onto the stage, the audience erupted in applause. She waved, she smiled. She sat down with the kind of confidence that suggested she was doing The View a favor just by being there. Whoopi welcomed her warmly, as she always did. "Welcome to The View," Whoopi said with genuine warmth. "We are so happy to have you here today." Meghan nodded, but there was something in her expression. Something that said she was tolerating this moment, rather than enjoying it. "Thank you for having me," Meghan replied, her voice polite but distant. The first few questions were standard. Whoopi asked about recent projects. She asked about life. She asked about the transition from royal life to private life. Meghan answered with rehearsed precision. Every word sounded like it had been written by a publicist. Every smile looked practiced. There was no warmth, no genuine connection. It felt like she was reading from a script. Whoopi, ever the professional, tried to loosen things up. She cracked a joke. The audience laughed, but Meghan just stared at her with a blank expression. No smile, no acknowledgement, nothing. "So," Whoopi continued, keeping her tone light, "a lot of people want to know what your day-to-day life looks like now. Can you walk us through a typical day?" Meghan shifted in her seat. Her expression changed. She looked almost annoyed by the question. "Well, Whoopi, I think that is a bit of a simplistic question. Do not you think? My life is far more complex than just a typical day. There are layers to what I do. Layers that I am not sure everyone here would understand." The audience went quiet. You could feel the tension creeping into the room. Whoopi, to her credit, did not flinch. She just smiled and nodded. "Of course," Whoopi said calmly. "I was just trying to give people a glimpse into your world. But I understand if you would rather not share." Meghan leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. Her body language screamed defensiveness. "It is not that I do not want to share, Whoopi. It is just that some questions feel a bit beneath me, if I am being honest. I came here to talk about important things, real issues, not what I eat for breakfast." Whoopi raised her eyebrows slightly. The audience murmured. This was not going well. But Whoopi, being the seasoned host she was, tried to steer the conversation back on track. "Fair enough," Whoopi said. "Let us talk about those real issues then. You have been vocal about a lot of topics lately. What would you say is the most important message you want to share with people right now?" Meghan's eyes lit up. Finally, a question she seemed interested in answering. She leaned forward, her voice taking on a practiced, almost rehearsed quality. "I think the most important thing people need to understand is that not everyone is cut out to handle the kind of pressure I have been under. Not everyone has the strength, the resilience, the grace that I have had to develop. And I think it is important for people to recognize that, to give credit where credit is due." Whoopi paused. She blinked. The audience was dead silent now. Even the camera operators looked uncomfortable. What Meghan had just said was not inspiring. It was not empowering. It was self-congratulatory to an almost absurd degree. That is That is an interesting way to put it, Whoopi said carefully. But do not you think a lot of people face immense pressure in their own lives? Single parents working 3 jobs, people fighting illnesses, people just trying to survive. Do not you think they have that same strength and resilience? Meghan's face hardened. The mask of politeness she had been wearing started to crack. Well, Whoopi, I do not think you can really compare my situation to someone working 3 jobs. I mean, the level of scrutiny I have faced, the global attention, the constant media attacks, it is just not the same. I do not think people understand the weight of what I carry every single day. Whoopi's expression shifted. She was not smiling anymore. The warmth that had been in her eyes at the start of the interview was gone. Now, there was something else. Disappointment. Maybe even disbelief. With all due respect, Whoopi said slowly, her voice firm but controlled, I think you might want to reconsider that statement. There are people out there who would give anything to have the opportunities you have had, the platform you have, the resources you have access to, and to sit here and say that their struggles do not compare to yours, that is a problem. The audience murmured louder now. Some people nodded in agreement with Whoopi. Others looked shocked that things had taken this turn. Meghan, however, did not back down. If anything, she doubled down. I am not saying their struggles do not matter, Whoopi. I am just saying that my struggles are different. They are bigger. They affect more people. And I think it is dismissive of you to try to diminish what I have been through just to make a point. Whoopi took a deep breath. You could see her processing what she had just heard. She glanced at the audience. She glanced at the other hosts. Then she looked back at Meghan. I am not trying to diminish anything, Whoopi said, her voice steady. But I am also not going to sit here and let you act like you are the only person in the world who has ever faced hardship. That is not reality. And honestly, it is a bit insulting to everyone who has worked hard, who has struggled, who has fought for every single thing they have. Meghan's jaw tightened. Her eyes narrowed. The polished, media-trained version of herself was slipping away, and what was emerging in its place was someone who did not like being challenged. You know what, Whoopi? I do not think you are in a position to lecture me about hard work. You have had a successful career, sure, but you have never had to deal with what I have had to deal with. The racism, the constant attacks, the betrayal. You have no idea what that is like. The room went completely silent. It was the kind of silence that felt heavy, dangerous. Whoopi stared at Meghan for a long moment. Then, slowly, she leaned back in her chair. Excuse me, Whoopi said, her voice low but sharp. Did you just tell me, a black woman who has been in this industry for over 4 decades, that I do not know what racism feels like? Did you really just say that to me? Meghan faltered for the first time. She seemed to realize, too late, that she had crossed a line. But instead of apologizing, instead of backing down, she tried to justify what she had said. I did not mean it like that, Whoopi. I just meant that my experience is unique. That is all. Whoopi shook her head. She was not having it. No, you do not get to walk that back. You said what you said, and let me tell you something. I have been dealing with racism since before you were born. I have fought for every single opportunity I have ever had. I have been told I was not good enough, not pretty enough, not the right fit, more times than I can count. So do not sit there and act like you are the only person who has ever faced adversity. And definitely do not tell me that I do not understand what you are going through. The audience erupted in applause. People were clapping. Some were even standing. Whoopi had just said what so many people in that room and watching at home had been thinking. Meghan sat there, her face red, her hands gripping the armrests of her chair. I think you're being unfair, Meghan said, her voice shaking slightly. I think you are twisting my words. I am not twisting anything, Whoopi shot back. I am calling you out. Because what you just said was disrespectful. Not just to me, but to every person who has ever had to fight for a seat at the table. You were born into privilege. You married into more privilege. And yes, you have faced challenges. I am not saying you have not. But to sit here and act like you are somehow above everyone else, like your pain is more important than anyone else's, that is not okay. Meghan stood up abruptly. The cameras zoomed in. The audience gasped. She looked down at Whoopi with a mixture of anger and indignation. I do not have to sit here and listen to this, Meghan said, her voice rising. I came here in good faith, and you are attacking me. You are putting words in my mouth. This is exactly what I was talking about. This is exactly the kind of treatment I have been subjected to over and over again. Whoopi did not flinch. She just looked up at Meghan with calm, steady eyes. I am not attacking you, Whoopi said quietly. I am holding you accountable. There is a difference. And if you cannot handle being challenged, if you cannot handle someone disagreeing with you without calling it an attack, then maybe you are not ready to be on a show like this. That was it. That was the moment. Meghan's face went from red to pale. Her hands were shaking. She looked around the room as if searching for support, but no one was coming to her defense. Not the audience. Not the other hosts. No one. You know what, Whoopi? Meghan said, her voice dripping with disdain. I actually feel sorry for you. I feel sorry that you are so threatened by me that you have to resort to tearing me down on your own show. Maybe that says more about you than it does about me. The audience booed. Actually booed. Whoopi just sat there, completely unbothered. She let the boos die down before she spoke again. Threatened? Whoopi repeated, almost amused. Baby, I am not threatened by you. I have been doing this for longer than you have been alive. What I am is disappointed. Disappointed that you came on this show with an attitude. Disappointed that you could not have a real conversation without making it all about yourself. And disappointed that when you were called out, your first instinct was to lash out instead of listening. Meghan grabbed her purse. She turned to walk off the stage. But Whoopi was not done yet. And just so we are clear, Whoopi added, her voice cutting through the studio, you are not walking off this show. You are being asked to leave. Because we do not tolerate disrespect here. Not toward me. Not toward this audience. Not toward anyone. Meghan froze. She turned back to look at Whoopi, her eyes wide with shock. You cannot kick me off, Meghan said, her voice barely above a whisper. You do not have the authority to do that. Whoopi smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the kind of smile that said she was done playing nice. Actually, I do. This is my show. This is my table. And I decide who gets to sit at it. And right now, I am deciding that you do not get that privilege anymore. So please, see yourself out. The audience erupted again. This time it was not just applause. People were cheering. They were on their feet. Producers were rushing onto the stage, trying to figure out what to do. But Whoopi just sat there, calm and composed, as if she had just handled a minor inconvenience. Meghan stood there for a moment, looking utterly stunned. Then, without another word, she turned and walked off the stage. The cameras followed her as she disappeared backstage. And just like that, it was over. But let us rewind. Let us talk about what led to this moment. Because this was not just about one comment or one exchange. Or this was the result of an attitude that had been brewing from the moment Meghan walked into that studio. From the very beginning, Meghan had treated this interview like an obligation. Like she was doing everyone a favor just by showing up. Her answers were short. Her tone was dismissive. She barely engaged with Whoopi or the other hosts. It was clear that she did not want to be there. And when Whoopi tried to lighten the mood, tried to connect with her on a human level, Meghan shut her down. She made it clear that she was above the kind of casual, friendly banter that makes The View so popular. She wanted to talk about important things. Her important things. Her struggles. Her perspective. Her voice. But here's the thing. The View is not a platform for people to monologue about themselves. It is a conversation. It is a dialogue. And Meghan did not seem to understand that. Or maybe she did understand it, and she just did not care. When she said that her struggles were bigger, that they affected more people, that they could not be compared to the struggles of everyday people, she revealed something. She revealed that, deep down, she believed she was special, that she was different, that the rules that applied to everyone else did not apply to her. And when Whoopi challenged that belief, when she refused to let Meghan position herself as uniquely victimized, Meghan could not handle it. Because she had spent so long being told that she was right, that she was justified, that she was brave, that hearing anything different felt like an attack. Let us go back to that moment when things really started to unravel. When Meghan made that comment about Whoopi not understanding racism, the room did not just go silent. The energy shifted completely. You could see it on the faces of everyone in the studio. The other hosts looked shocked. The producers in the back looked panicked. The audience members were whispering to each other. Everyone knew that line had been crossed. And Whoopi, in that moment, had a choice. She could have let it go. She could have smiled politely, changed the subject, and moved on. That is what a lot of hosts would have done. Keep the peace. Avoid confrontation. Protect the guest, even when the guest is wrong. But Whoopi is not like other hosts. She has never been one to bite her tongue when something needs to be said. And in that moment, something definitely needed to be said. Let me tell you something about what I have been through, Whoopi said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. I have been in rooms where I was the only black woman. The only woman, period. I have been told that I was not pretty enough for Hollywood, that my hair was wrong, that my voice was wrong, that everything about me was wrong. And you know what I did? I kept going. I kept working. I kept proving people wrong. Not because I thought I was special, but because I knew I had something to offer. And I was not going to let anyone take that away from me. The audience was hanging on every word. Some people had tears in their eyes. Because what Whoopi was saying was not just about her. It was about every person who has ever been underestimated. Every person who has ever been told they were not good enough. Now, every person who has ever had to fight twice as hard just to get half as far. Meghan sat there, her face getting redder by the second. She opened her mouth to speak, but Whoopi was not finished. And you want to sit here and tell me that I do not know what it is like? Whoopi continued. That I do not understand what you have been through? Baby, I have been fighting these battles since you were in diapers. So please, do not insult my intelligence or my experience by acting like you invented struggle. The applause was thunderous. It went on for so long that the producers had to signal for the audience to quiet down so the show could continue. But even when the applause died down, the tension remained. Meghan was clearly rattled. Her hands were gripping the armrests so tightly that her knuckles were white. I think you are twisting what I said, Meghan finally managed to say, her voice shaking. I never said you did not face challenges. I just said that my situation is different. Different is not the same as harder, Whoopi replied immediately. Different is not the same as more important. And that is what you do not seem to understand. You keep acting like your pain is somehow worth more than everyone else's. Like your story is the only one that matters. And that is a problem. Because it is not just arrogant. It is hurtful. It dismisses the real struggles that real people face every single day. One of the other hosts tried to jump in, tried to mediate, but Whoopi held up her hand. No, Whoopi said firmly. This needs to be said. Because if we do not say it now, if we just let this slide, then we are part of the problem. And we are enabling this kind of thinking. And I am not going to do that. Not on my show. Not ever. Meghan looked around the table, clearly hoping someone would come to her defense. But no one did, because deep down, everyone in that room knew Whoopi was right. They had all seen the way Meghan had walked in with that air of superiority. They had all heard the dismissive tone in her voice. They had all witnessed the moment she tried to position herself as uniquely victimized, and they were all tired of it. "You know what the real problem is?" Meghan said, her voice rising again. "The real problem is that people like you cannot stand to see someone like me speaking my truth. You cannot stand to see me being honest about what I have been through, and so you attack me. You try to silence me. You try to make me feel like I am wrong for sharing my experience." Whoopi laughed. Not a mean laugh. Not a mocking laugh. But a laugh that said she had heard this kind of argument 1,000 times before, and it was not going to work. "Oh, sweetheart," Whoopi said, shaking her head. "Nobody is trying to silence you. Trust me, if we wanted to silence you, we would have cut to commercial a long time ago. What we are doing is challenging you. We are asking you to think about what you are saying. We are asking you to consider how your words might affect other people. And apparently, that is too much to ask." "This is unbelievable," Meghan said, standing up so abruptly that her chair nearly tipped over. "I came here to have a conversation. A real, honest conversation. And instead, I am being ambushed. I am being attacked. I am being treated like I am the villain when all I have done is speak my truth." "Your truth is not the only truth," Whoopi said calmly. "And speaking your truth does not mean you get to disrespect everyone else in the process. You came on this show with an agenda. You wanted to control the narrative. You wanted to make sure that everyone saw you as the victim. And when I refused to play along, when I refused to just nod and agree with everything you said, you could not handle it. That is what this is really about." Meghan grabbed her purse again, her movements sharp and angry. She looked like she wanted to say something else, something cutting, but the words would not come. Because deep down, she knew Whoopi was right. She knew that she had come onto that show expecting to be coddled, expecting to be praised, expecting everyone to just accept her version of events without question. And when that did not happen, when she was met with pushback, she crumbled. "I do not need this," Meghan said, her voice breaking slightly. "I do not need to be here. I do not need to subject myself to this kind of treatment." "Then leave," Whoopi said simply. "No one is forcing you to stay. But before you go, let me make one thing perfectly clear. You are not leaving because you are being mistreated. You are leaving because you cannot handle being held accountable. There is a big difference." And with that, Meghan turned and walked off the stage. The cameras followed her every step. The audience watched in stunned silence. And Whoopi sat there, calm and composed, as if she had just finished discussing the weather. After a few seconds, Whoopi turned to the camera and spoke directly to the viewers at home. "We are going to take a quick break," she said. "And when we come back, we're going to talk about something really important. We are going to talk about accountability. We are going to talk about respect. And we are going to talk about why it is so important to stay humble, no matter how successful you become. So stick around." The show cut to commercial, and just like that, one of the most dramatic moments in talk show history was over. But the impact of what had just happened would be felt for a long time. Because what Whoopi did that day was not just stand up for herself. She stood up for every person who has ever been talked down to. Every person who has ever been dismissed. Every person who has ever been made to feel like their experiences do not matter. So the next time someone asks what happens when a guest forgets where they are and who they are talking to, the answer is this: they get reminded, swiftly, publicly, and unforgettably. And that is exactly what happened to Meghan Markle on The View.